right, Mr. Kissinger, welcome back.
Hey, man, it's good to be here.
You look very nice today.
Oh, thank you. I'm dressed up for Bible study tonight.
Oh.
I'm going through a Bible study of Max Lucado, Anxious for Nothing. And I kind of like the old way at churches, everybody used to kind of dress up, and now everything's kind of casual. So I'm trying to bring it back.
Trying to
bring back the tie, man.
I think it
like
looks very nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I always enjoyed a tie.
Yeah.
Once I learned how to tie, I didn't want to waste that effort. It took me so long to figure out how to get the knot right. And there's like a single Windsor, a double Windsor, and then there's some pretty fancy knots that you can get into that are pretty cool.
I'm pretty good with a clip-on.
Yeah, clip-ons are nice. Yeah. The clip-on's not quite as constraining around the neck either. Like the dangerous thing about a tie is if you make your wife mad,
right,
it can serve as a leash as well. So or a hangman's noose almost. It's not good. So you have to be careful if you're wearing the tie to be extra nice to your mate.
Absolutely, which is probably good practice.
That's a good practice anyway. So this just keeps you honest.
Well, and I find too, it does make a difference. Even in the classroom sometimes.
Oh, sure.
My particular line, I don't wear it every single day, but I do find that I do try to wear it every now and then. I do think it makes a difference.
Probably a subtle psychological component to that, as we sort of behave based on what our environment is. You know what I mean? And so the environment either causes you to act up in a sense that you're behaving at your best, or act up, act out, and so I think maybe there's a psychology of environment, a psychology of dress. Like one of the things you find when you're dealing with depression is sometimes as a pastor, when I was counseling people with depression, you'd go to visit them and the house would be dark, shades closed, no lights on in the house. They would sort of be slouched over. And there was an environment of depression, and there was a physiology of depression. Their shoulders were slumped, their head was hung low. They were just limp almost, as though life had just totally beat them. And one of the things that I would work with them on is that we typically act our way into feeling rather than feel our way into acting. It's not that it's impossible to feel your way into acting. So some morning you wake up and you feel really good, you're innervated, you sort of burst into the day. That's a wonderful thing. But let's face it, not every day's like that.
No.
Most days aren't. Most days. Yeah. And the alarm goes off, and you say, "Oh my!" Instead of yeah, here
we go again.
Here we go one more time.
Yeah.
And so what I would encourage them to do is to throw open the shades, let light into the room, sit up straight, go get out into the world, go out and start talking to people. Instead of isolating, which sometimes happens with depression, actually interaction with other people is probably one of the crucial components to getting better for a couple of reasons. One is that you're aware that you're not the only person that has problems. So as you're seeing other people, you see that they're struggling maybe, and so there's a companionship. There's sort of it's like the fellowship of back pain. Probably nobody understands back pain like somebody that's had back pain.
Right.
And so if I say, man, my aching back, and you go, I had a surgery on my back.
My back hurts too.
Yeah, my back hurts too.
Yeah.
And now we've got a connection together. And so, but it's impossible to make the connection if I'm sitting in my house, shades drawn, lights out, and so it's one of the ways of acting your way into feeling.
You almost fulfill your own prophecy.
Yeah. You've created a self-perpetuating problem of depression. So I'm depressed. I'm going to act depressed. Now I feel depressed because I'm acting depressed.
Right.
So
if you can, I've created this world for myself. Maybe not on purpose, but that's kind of one thing. And I need to probably get back into doing it, but. I worked for a school district several years ago that they actually required the teachers every day to come in, and the principal would come around and check. We had a little spiral notebook, and we would have to write one positive thing about ourselves.
That's a great deal.
Every morning. And of course, he launches this in the staff meeting. The staff kind of goes, "Oh, come on," right? He's like, "Nope, it's part of your evaluation now. I'm going to do it." And to be honest, I was like, "Oh, I don't know if this will work." Well, it does work.
Sure.
And after about 2 or 3 weeks, you start to go, yeah, I did a pretty good job on that lesson yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I think that helps to deal with the inner critic, because everybody has within them this inner critic. And I suppose probably the inner critic serves a purpose in our life. There may be a purpose for it there. Usually the inner critic was developed during some time of trauma that was in our life, some horrible bad thing happened, and we needed kind of that inner voice to sort of navigate us through that bad time. But as with all things, the situation changed on the outside, and then now those patterns that we develop with that internal self-talk keep going. One of the strategies of dealing with that inner critic that I heard recently that kind of helped me, it was called hug the hobgoblin. And what it meant was that there was typically a purpose for that voice that you hear, but now it's in a place where it's perfectionism instead of just correction.
Too far the other way.
Yeah, too far the other way. And so the concept was to hug the hobgoblin, is what they said, or it's thanking the century, the faithful century. I don't know if you remember, in about the 80s or 90s, there was a Japanese soldier that was found from World War II. He had been stationed on an island, a remote island. His job was to guard the island, and when they found him, they had to convince him that the war was over like 40 years ago. But he'd been guarding that island for 40 years, and they had to decommission him and stand him down and thank him for his 4 decades of service so that he could be free to do what he needed to do.
That's amazing.
And so there's what the psychologists and counselors say is that we've developed these patterns that at one stage in life it helped us, but then it doesn't help us anymore. So thank that part of you that helped you, hug the hobgoblin, and let him go.
Let it go.
Yeah, let it go.
And I think it's really hard too, and maybe you're touching on this a little bit, not carrying that negative experience and applying it to the new experience.
Right.
And I know that I'm guilty of that sometimes. I'll go, oh, something like this happened to me before. I bet it's going to happen again, and I almost might create that happening again.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in abusive situations, whether it's verbal abuse or physical abuse, there's typical responses and reactions. Like if you're ever around anybody that's been physically abused, any sudden motion and they're taking a defensive posture, and that's a residual of that abuse that they suffered. Or a lot of times with verbal abuse, they've developed a patterned response of answering back to people, and without being aware of it, they're responding to abuse that isn't coming.
They almost perceive it and it's not there.
Yeah.
I know that was one of the things that was really interesting to me, especially working when I was still in the Air National Guard. I began to have troops that were underneath me, and you would see the effects of some of the things that they had gone through. And I spoke to a psychologist and a counselor about it. I said, well, why is this happening? Because it did not seem like I was being threatening, but they would come back as if they were threatened. And they said one of the things that happens to our brain when we go through those extreme or either really quick traumatic or a long time of being threatened, our survival brain will actually kick into high gear. And so facial expressions that you or I would not necessarily read as threatening, suddenly they're going to assume a threat.
Right.
But there may or may not be a threat there. And,
it's that little amygdala
there
that kicks the body's fight or flight mode into high gear. And fight or flight works really good if you're facing a tiger. It's probably terrible if you're in a meeting.
Absolutely.
Because now all of a sudden you're overreacting to the words the other person is saying, or you're postulating that they mean something that they patently don't mean.
Constructive criticism is different than a tiger.
But we're hearing it that way, and our body has a response. And one of the things that we have to do is to break that pattern. Like if we're in one of those situations that really the amygdala is not our best friend,
right?
Is that we need to sort of find a way to calm down the response of the amygdala. Like one thing is to move a little bit, like if you can go for a little brisk walk for just a second and kind of get that adrenaline out of your system so that you can come back and then talk in a calm tone with that other person. A lot of times that can bleed it off, or take some deep calming breaths. I know that sounds woo-woo.
No, there's a lot of research that shows that
it's physiology, and the Bible says that God created us body, soul, and spirit in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and that means that all of those components work in tandem or trio, and we have to understand how they work and how they fit together. And sometimes we try to apply a spiritual solution to a physical problem. So it's not necessarily that I might need to dump the adrenaline in my body, then I can remember the Bible verse that says a soft answer turns away wrath. Now I can lower my voice, in the situation. Where before I was beginning to escalate,
Right.
and now I'm talking louder, and I'm beginning to lean in and kind of get threatening, and that's of course escalating your response to it. But if I can calm down, dump the adrenaline in some way, and kind of restore my heart rate to the right place, now I'm in a place where I can begin to apply some spiritual principles, some relational principles that can.
And I think that's important too, to not only recognize that it happens to us, but it happens to others. And maybe that's the concept of grace.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
So I know that if I do these things, that this person is going to escalate. But maybe I just need to back off for a second.
Right. I don't have to fix. For one thing I'm trying to learn is I don't have to fix everybody. Probably one of the occupational hazards of being in the ministry is you've got this idea that you have to fix people. Well, that's not the reality of it.
What a weight on your shoulder.
Yeah, that's the weight God never intended to bear. Because really His Holy Spirit is the one that brings about true and lasting change in the hearts and lives of people. No, God wants to use me maybe to deliver a message, perhaps, to speak a word, to give counsel, a possibility of direction, but it's not my job to go in and tinker with and change them.
Right.
It's God's job. Because even if I made them, and the danger of ministry too, and maybe as parents, is we want to make everybody just like us.
Right.
Well, the world doesn't have to be just like me.
Yeah. And in some ways, if I make them like me, that's justification that I'm okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm a good guy.
I'm pretty good.
Follow my pattern.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Paul only said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." He didn't say just follow me. He said, follow me as I follow Christ. And so he was patterning himself after Christ, and then he could say, in those areas that you see Christ likeness in my life, then follow me.
Follow that.
But if there's an area
ignore the
you
bad
don't,
parts, right?
Use the chicken eating principle: eat the meat, throw away the bone.
Right.
And that's what I use when I read books. Sometimes I read a book, and I don't have to agree with everything in a book in order for me to derive benefit from it. And sometimes I'll quote a person or a book or an author. It doesn't mean I endorse everything that person says.
Yeah.
It just means that there was some nugget, that specific truth that I'm speaking right now, I happen to agree with. It doesn't mean I agree with everything they ever wrote or everything they ever will write, but I use the chicken eating principle. I eat the meat, I throw the bone away.
Yeah.
To me, that just makes sense.
It does make sense. Well, and I think that might almost be something, too, that our society at large is dealing with now. If, let's say that you vote or for a particular candidate, pick your party. That's not necessarily important here to specify which one, but let's say you pick one. Well, you may not agree with everything that candidate says.
Sure.
And so I think sometimes we get into a position where we almost feel like we have to defend everything that person said, and that's not necessarily the case.
Whenever a president is elected, in my opinion, they're the ever presidents and never presidents. There's always a group of people that no matter what that president does, they will always think that is exactly right. And there are another group of people that they're the never presidents, and what I mean by that is no matter what that president does, they can't do anything right.
Sure.
And so I've always found myself kind of in the middle. I found that presidents are a mixed bag. They're good, bad. They do some good stuff and some bad stuff.
Sure.
And then I
beings, right?
Yeah. So you just try to vote for the one that's gonna accomplish as much of what you would like to see accomplished as possible, and then you gotta live with the results. Because they're just people. They're human.
They're human beings, and I think too there's a concept of the office of the president is something that goes beyond the person that's filling the office.
I've always felt like the God ordained authority. Romans 13 talks about that principle that God has ordained authority, and so that we could function as a society. If there was no authority, no lines of authority, you're in the military. Military wouldn't work without lines.
Absolutely not. There has to be someone.
You have to have structure.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that the person that's up the chain in the structure is somehow better than you. Qualitatively, it doesn't mean that the people that are above us are somehow better human beings. That's not at all the case. And in fact, even if you take the military structure, there's a Bible word for submission. It means hypomone, I think is how it's pronounced. I can barely pronounce English, but
that's pretty good.
Hypomone, I don't know. But it means to order under, and it's actually derived. It is derived from a military structure. This idea that you're ordering under another person, but But like if you take a military, America, I believe we have the greatest military force in the world. I believe that we have the greatest military men and women. I could make the argument that the private in the military is more important than the general in the military. Now, the general is the one that directs the flow of the warfare and maybe sets the agenda, like Colin Powell, his doctrine of overwhelming force in the Persian Gulf, the first Persian Gulf War, where they went in and they pounded it for 1,000 sorties of bombs in before they went in, and that saved a lot of American lives because they were already softened up to the point that a lot of them were whole units were surrendering in that thing, and so he set tactics, and so he set the tactic. But certainly, you have to make the argument that the Air Force pilots that flew the 1,000 sorties play a more important role than him, you know. And so I think that to say that I'm submitted to authority is not saying that authority is better than I am. It's not saying the authority is perfect. It's just saying that God has established authority, and the only way a system works is if we submit to it.
Someone's driving,
right? Yeah, and of course, I understand there are limits to that. So we can come to a place where maybe in a society we may have to say, ought we to obey God rather than man?
Sure.
So maybe if authority is trying to get us to violate a fundamental component of our conscience, your value systems, then maybe a civil disobedience is an appropriate response to that. But
and I think even the founders pretty much communicated that.
I think they were pretty clear. Yeah. They were pretty clear, and they of course voted with some bullets. They certainly. They felt like there had come a break between them and England, and they were willing to stand and risk everything, and they did risk everything to give us the free country that we have. And we should cherish that. And like this next week, there's going to be a local vote. I would encourage everybody to get out and vote. That's our new way of creating change. In a lot of other countries, the only way that they can create change is with a bullet. We have a ballot. You know,
I prefer the ballot.
I prefer the ballot. I think it's a much more effective tool, and it's one that we need to use.
Sure.
But I think we need to encourage everybody to vote. Everybody to get out and to vote, so that they can, so that the America can have a voice, and because we are the government, really.
I heard someone say this. I can't remember who. I'll try and find out. But basically, the First Amendment was important because reasonable people wanted to have reasonable discussion, but the Second Amendment was there just in case that people weren't reasonable.
Yeah. We have that mechanism, and especially and I think the Founding Fathers put the Second Amendment in case the government ever got not reasonable. I think they intentionally, because the Founding Fathers' concept was the best government was local government or self-government. They believed that the best government was internal, so that we, and as nations, one of the things that we really need to work on, self-control is not the hallmark of the American people. I mean, if you look at us, we're not self-controlled. We are out of control. And the Proverbs had a statement that said it is better to rule your own spirit than to rule a city. And I think if we could kind of get back to that self-control,
calm the storm within.
Then we don't export the storm. I think a lot of problems in relationships and marriages and in communities are people who have war inside of them, and that war inside of them spills out. But if they could learn to have peace that flows from above into them, that peace would flow out of them. If I knock your coffee cup and I hit it, I'm going to spill out only what is in the coffee cup. If the coffee cup has coffee, it will spill coffee. If a coffee cup has water, it'll spill water. So if somebody bumps up against me and I react, that reaction is it tells me what's inside of me, and I need to change that. That's something.
That's true.
By the way, speaking about your cup, I've been drinking out of my old thermos bottle here that's all dented up, but you've got Bob's Bling here.
Oh, thank you.
Tell them how they can get a hold of some Bob's Bling.
So I have a link on my YouTube channel, and I'll go ahead and put it back up there again at the top. But it allows you to go to a Patreon site, and I have 3 different tiers, and the top tier is just $5 a month. And if you sign up for that, then I'll send you a coffee cup.
And the things that you're doing with your site, give me there's 3 basic areas right now that you're working on. Can you tell me what they are?
So the biggest thing is family, and with that positivity, I think kind of blends into that. there's just so much negative information out there. Yeah,
nasty.
Yeah. And I just want to promote something positive. Like, we don't have to be angry every day.
No.
Right?
And
there's a lot of good things that are to be joyful about. Absolutely.
Right.
And so then the other part of that is family, which is where I derive my joy from, is my family. The outdoors is also a big thing for me. And then I think also just kind of like, how can we make other lives better? Like, so when we talk about the stress, I mean, that's where my relaxation videos come into play.
Right.
And so, I mean, I've mentioned it before, but, I'm a veteran, and so, of course, I was overseas 5 different times post 9/11. And so there were some times that were stressful, Not that veterans have some sort of hold on stress. I mean, there's stress.
But certainly that's probably the paramount stress, is those life-threatening situations and life-taking situations that you find yourself in.
Yeah. And so then you have to deal with those things and either be ruled by them or say, this is what happened and I'm going to find a way to move on.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest thing, is one, I want to help people, and two, I want to show them that they really have the power to do these things. Everything that I'm doing, they can do. I'm just turning a camera on it. And the last thing is, I want this to be a legacy for my children. I want them to be able to go back and say, this is what Dad was doing at this time, and this is what we did as a family.
Right.
And these are the things that I want to take from them, and these are the things I might not take from that. They can make that choice, right?
I like that. I kind of like that I'm getting to speak on here, and my kids can see it too down the road.
Isn't that kind of neat? Yeah.
Maybe after I pass, they can go back and see it. I'm not that I'm looking to pass real soon.
Right. I would rather wait.
I would rather wait. I'm not anxious. I know where I'm going, but I don't want to cash in my ticket just yet. Especially if it's going to be a painful
I'll wait in line
I'll wait in line a little longer. I always said I'm not afraid of dying. It's the process that really scares me.
Right.
I just don't want it to hurt really bad.
Yeah.
One of the things we thought we might talk about is stress for the holidays. Like, this is the very end of October as we're sort of doing this broadcast, this podcast. I don't know what you call it. I don't know what you fancy tech people call these things.
All right, holiday stress.
Holiday stress. We're coming into Thanksgiving and Christmas, 2 of the biggies, and all the family gets together. Everybody comes together, and there's so much expectation and build up. Especially as I was a pastor for 3 or 4 decades, almost 4, headed towards that, but between assistant pastor and head pastor. But one of the things that I noticed was that every November there was a build up to Thanksgiving, and then another bigger build up to Christmas. And then kind of there was a big crash afterwards. And I noticed a lot of people in my church and kind of in my circle of sphere of influence really struggled with depression and anxiety during that time of the year. Is that something you've noticed as well?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, especially the last 3 or 4 years, I've noticed it because for whatever reason, I don't know if this holds true for other people, the people that pass, it seems to happen before Christmas.
Yeah.
Right in the Thanksgiving, Christmas time.
Right.
For whatever, because winter's hard on people, and I think maybe that's some of it. But, so not only are you supposed to have this happy, joyous time, right, when you're thinking about Jesus and all of those things, but you also have this, well, that's when Grandpa died.
That's me. My dad died on Christmas morning.
Yeah.
And my mom died on Easter Sunday morning. So I'm not saying that it happened because it was Christmas morning, but I'm saying that you do tend to see that. I mean,
so as a child, it's this great gleeful experience, and you don't really fully understand the impact. But then, as an adult, I think now, like, there's the joy of watching my children go through this experience, and then there's this almost sadness that those that you knew before aren't here anymore. Right. So that might be, for me personally, I don't know if that holds true for everyone.
I think that's definitely the truth. I mean, because you're more aware of the empty chair.
Yeah.
Everybody's around the table, and you remember, Uncle John that used to tell the funny story. He's not there anymore.
Pull the hair out of the
you had to give you an Indian bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Charlie Horse. Let me introduce you to Charlie Horse. I don't want to know him.
Right.
I've met him before.
I've met him, then we're good.
I met him. It hurts.
We're not on speaking terms right now. So
my uncles would throw us in a holly tree. We had a holly tree that was made up of 3 different holly trees that grew together, and it was massive. And so whenever our uncles would come, they would all pitch us into the holly tree. Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday.
That's right.
Like, Uncle, come on, man.
Well, now when I think about great grandma and grandpas and stuff, that was a tough generation too.
They were tough, dude.
Yeah.
Tough as nails.
Yeah, you had to be, or you wouldn't make it. I don't think.
Well, because a lot of them grew up, when we're talking about our grandma and grandpa, we're talking about people that came through the Great Depression, the war to end all wars, the second war to end all wars, really, and
after the Depression, we had a World War, and then,
and then, and so they came through from trauma to trauma, and they were harder people. Like, one of the things when I would do funerals of those that were part of the greatest generation, I would tell their family, I was, you know what, a lot of these guys and gals didn't spend a lot of time saying, I love you, but it didn't mean they didn't love you.
Right.
It's just that they articulated it by providing for you, by being there for you, by being a rock-solid influence for you. But a lot of them didn't have the linguistics for it, because they weren't taught to say that, and they grew up in very harsh times where they just didn't have a lot of, a lot of time to think about that stuff. They were busy surviving.
And their great-grandparents may have been Civil War veterans.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really not been that long ago.
Well, just a side note about Christmas is they say there are 3 stages to every man's life. One is you believe in Santa Claus. Second is you are Santa Claus, and third you look like Santa Claus. I have now. I'm now in the third. Yeah, I'm in the third stage. Yeah. So just a bit of Christmas humor to help you play this during Christmas to relieve the stress, and you can look at 2 guys that look like Santa Claus to kind of de-stress a little bit.
I had a student one time that came up to me, and he meant it as a compliment. And he came up to me and he says, Mr. Hunter. And I said, yeah. And he goes, you're just like Santa Claus. And you look like him too. And his eyes were shining. And the other people in the room were like, don't say that, right? Yeah. And I said, you know what? I've been called worse things than Santa Claus.
Yes, I can.
So
if I had to be compared to somebody, Brother Claus would be okay.
Yeah, that's
I'm
just
okay
fine.
Like
So we kind of play the roles as we play them.
I'm trying to find the place of acceptance with joy.
Right.
And that may be one of the tools to use as you go into holiday stress, is understand that there are going to be some moments during that holiday where you're going to be stressed out, and there's probably nothing you can do to change the situation because it involves other people and how they interact together. But sometimes if you can just develop an acceptance with joy about the situation, you know what, my family's not perfect, nobody's is. There's always, it seems like that there are certain roles that people play in a family setting. I was listening to a sermon by a man named Brother Mateo that came to preach at our church, and he was preaching in Spanish, which I don't understand, but his mannerisms were such that I was able to follow what he was saying. And he was saying that anytime you get together in church, he goes, sometimes inevitably there are those irritating people, and he talked about Brother Hammer and Sister File and Cousin Sandpaper,
yes.
and there are those people that are around us that make us very uncomfortable. But one of the inconvenient truths of that is they actually provide a shaping influence in our life. In other words, our right response to whatever source of irritation is there can produce a pearl, so to speak. Now, you understand how a pearl is made. A grain of sand is injected into the oyster just through now they intentionally inject it. But then, back in the day, it was just, it got a grain of sand, and then mother of pearl began to coat the grain of sand to make it more, less abrasive to the inside of the oyster, because who wants a sharp
polisher?
Like a rock polisher. And now the end product is this pearl that initially was a source of irritation.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I think as an adult, I avoid politics with most of my family.
Probably best, at least during Thanksgiving, if you want to avoid somebody flipping the table,
But at the same time, we can still, get around the table and play a game of Uno or Parcheesi,
sure,
and enjoy each other's company. And I think that's important too.
One of the things I think maybe we need to get back to, Sandy and I started, and we haven't followed through with it for a while, and we need to again, but we had a game night. And we'd invite people over to come just play games. We'd break up into little groups, and some would be playing Uno, some a board game, like Life that you pop the wheel and it does it. Life or other ones, and there's something about that takes us out of the digital world into the real world. And I think anything we can do, and that's why your videos are so good, that are your adventure videos that you're out there in the woods, is we get a little bit of a taste beyond our four walls. We kind of get cloistered in.
We do. We kind of there's an old television show, the Outside Zone or the
Outer Limits.
The Outer Limits, but even before that, Twilight Zone. And there's one where an astronaut goes to Mars and he runs into these aliens, and the aliens appear to be taking care of him and all of this kind of stuff, and they build this house for him. But then he suddenly realizes that he's locked in the house; he can't leave the house. And suddenly he realizes he is the zoo. Like they're watching him like he's the zoo. And it's and they end with something. I mean, not to say it exactly right, but they end with saying that man built himself a suburb and an air-conditioned home, and he never came back out.
I've heard the manicured lawn is the modern American moat.
The
manicured lawn is the modern American moat. And there was a day when I grew up in Missouri, me and my brothers would walk to the store, Vernon's Country Store, which was down by the city pool. So we like to go to the country store. Maybe we get to go swimming later or something. Yeah, it was Mayberry-ish. And the people on the front porches would stop and talk to you about your family. A simple trip of a few blocks would sometimes take an hour because you'd have to stop and talk to everybody and answer their questions about Grandma Bernice and Ray and Eva. How's her foot? And you got to answer the questions. And so there was this dialogue that took place. And Vernon knew everybody that came into the store. And some of them had accounts with him. They didn't have a charge card at the time, but some of them would have an account, and he knew they'd come in and settle up later.
Sure.
But there was this real world feel to it, and now we're sort of cloistered in. Now nobody knows their neighbor, and if they do know their neighbor, it's from a negative deal because the dog was barking and they wanted to shut your dog up, or some of your trash blew into their yard. And that's how sad that we've lost the congenial fellowship of just being a neighbor and being neighborly.
Yeah. I had a conversation with my neighbor. They had a dog, and we don't have a dog, and my kids love it. We'd have little campfires in the back and make s'mores with the kids and stuff like that. The dog would always come over because it would smell like campfire. The kids are going to drop something, either a hot dog or whatever. And so this went on for a couple of years, and then the dog didn't show up, and so I figured out what had happened. Well, every day that dog would take a poop right outside my truck door, right? And I learned not to step in there. And
so step on the doggy landmine.
Yeah. And so about 6 months after the dog had died, I'm visiting with my neighbor, and my neighbor's talking and stuff, and somehow we get onto it, and I mentioned, the dog would do this and everything, and they said, well, why didn't you ever say anything? I said, because I always enjoyed our conversations across the fence. I didn't figure we needed to talk about that.
Yeah. There's a Bible word for that's called forbearance. It says forgiving one another and forbearing one another. Forgiving, of course, deals with those past offenses that have taken place. We keep short accounts. We don't keep this long list of wrongs that others have done us and hold these grudges in it. That's not.
And I like the dog.
Yeah, I like the dog. And forbearance is we put up with those eccentricities, quirks. I'm probably one of the most eccentric people I know. I've got plenty of quirks. I really can't sit in judgment of people that are quirky. I'm the king of quirky.
Look at me. Sometimes my hair's going this way or whatever.
I get up and get peanut butter every night about midnight, 10 o'clock midnight. I get a big old gob of peanut butter. One night I about did myself in with peanut butter because we had switched to Adam's chunky natural peanut butter. And it got stuck. And I'm used to the jiffy, smooth, creamy stuff that's a little bit higher in carbs. Well, the Adams is lower in carbs, but it's very dry, and I don't get it mixed up. I got a big chunk of that stuck in my throat, man, and I'm trying to down some milk, and milk's running down. I'm like, I'm gonna die this way, man, and they're gonna be like, fine, Gene, how did he die? He choked on peanut butter. I'm not even sure God will let me into heaven if I choke on peanut butter. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't meet the requirements. I can't have people thinking,
that would be horrible. Yeah, I about choked on peanut butter when I was in high school, and then my response was, I'll take a drink of water. That was the wrong thing. That was the worst.
It plugged everything up. Once I started trying to get the milk down, the peanut butter provided a dam, and then there was no air coming in.
Absolutely,
Finally, I got it down. Fortunately, I survived it. So now I've learned my lesson that higher carb smooth peanut butter is better for me than the lower carb natural peanut butter, which apparently has it in for me.
What an awful way to go.
Exactly, yeah. Your last moments on earth, I died because I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
And then my wife, I know she'd be looking over me going, "I told you so."
I told you not to eat
I told you not to eat the peanut butter at night.
Yeah,
What were you thinking?
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Peanut butter.
Obviously, I wasn't, honey. Because my spirit ascended to wherever.
Right. Well, peanut butter is just about good for everything.
Awesome. Peanut butter.
It's nice.
Dude, it's beautiful.
Snack at night.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Peanut butter cups. I put a Facebook meme that says, there's a recall on Reese's peanut butter
I
cups.
saw that.
Send them to
That
me
was
and I'll
hilarious.
dispose of them properly.
Yeah.
Because I'm the man. I'm all about you.
That's
I
right.
care about
That's
you
right.
and helping you with your peanut butter cup problem.
That's right. Well, if there's a peanut butter cup, I'll eat it. So.
What are ways that you use to de-stress before a holiday comes, or ways that you've heard of that help people?
My biggest thing I probably do is I try to get out of nature, and that's kind of my default for everything. And I just kind of learned that sometimes I have the benefit now of being able to kind of escape up to my place, but sometimes it's just better for everybody if I have a night to myself.
Yeah.
And I know that's a luxury that's hard when the children are small.
Sure.
The children are getting older now, so a little bit more flexibility. But I think you have to find something that's for you, and that's at first I struggled with that. Well, that's selfish, but it's not.
No, it's not.
Because you can do less for them if you don't do that. So I find that I'm a better father and a better husband if I go up there and just kind of sit on the mountain for a night.
I like that.
And even they may join me the next morning, and they're happier too because, maybe the girls have had their friends over. And,
sure.
And maybe, my son has done something.
Sure.
And by the time we get up there, we can actually have that quality time. But it doesn't have to be a place like mine. It's something that works for you. What do you do?
Well, I just want to amplify what you're saying. There's a Japanese concept called forest bathing. What they do is they get out into nature, and what they found is, and there's actual studies that sort of prop up this concept, that getting out in nature calms you down. And I think that's part of grounding. I think we hit on that one of the other times that we talked. But you're grounded. You're breathing in that the smell of nature. And not the smell of cities.
To the earth.
Yeah. And there's some companies that are putting together some essential oils that try to capture some of that forest bathing, some of the scents that were most associated with it, so that people could use it to remind them of a time that they were out, that they couldn't get out. So like say you couldn't go to the forest, but you wanted, so say it's Thanksgiving Eve, tomorrow the family's going to come, and you want to kind of calm down before you go into that situation. You could use this essential oil the night before and kind of breathe it in and get because our mind, we have, I forget, they call them triggers, or there's another word for it. It's not the anchors, and so there's certain things that will cause an experience of floodback. For example, if you hear a song that you and your sweetheart was like your song, like for me and my wife, it's the song "If" by Brett. I serenaded her with it one time at Bible college, so that I had a guitar player playing it. She was up on a balcony, and I started singing, and the girls' dorm was upstairs and the boys' dorm was downstairs. And so we came out on the balcony to hear me singing the song "If," or slaughtering the song "If."
But you gave it your best shot.
But I gave it my best shot.
Yeah.
It wasn't David Gates, but it was my version.
Right.
And but listening to that song, then even today, if I hear the song "If," it reminds me of that moment in our relationship, and so it creates a wellspring of love and good feeling in me when I hear that song.
Sure.
So that's an anchor. And so what they're using this essential oils for, that capture these forest scents, is to anchor you to a time when you were grounded and you had the time to go out. And it doesn't replace that, but it sort of reinvigorates the feelings
a
of
little
it.
bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the hard side for me, is when we get into that cold weather and you can't go out. That's when I have a hard time, because of course my go-to is the outside, right?
Sure.
So, you can still take a walk or whatever, but there's nothing like a spring day or,
I like to see the sunrise or the sunset.
Yeah.
I'm seeing those two things.
Yeah, I've been known to bundle up really hard and just watch the sunset go down,
I like seeing on a stream or river, watching the steam rise, not steam, but it's mist rise from it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. With the hoarfrost on the trees, that's breathtaking.
And I know this is tough too, because everyone's time, like vacation time or weekends anymore. People are working 2 or 3 jobs and things like that. All that time has gone down a little bit, I think, in general for a lot of people. But if you can, even if you can manage to somehow carve out 2 or 3 days where you can get up with the sun and go to bed with the sun,
That's powerful.
I feel a million times better.
There's a preacher that uses this sort of alliterated advice to people, and he says, divert daily. Every day do something that diverts your attention away from the stresses and problems. Carve out some time, either early in the morning or late at night, sometime that's this time just for you.
Yeah.
To do what you like to do, what you like for with you, maybe the podcast, doing the editing, those kind of things, whatever, but something that you love to do, spend time doing it every day. And then he says withdraw weekly. And that means to get away some set amount of time, some hours at least every day, to get away from all the responsibilities. But, and then he says abandon annually. Get away for a longer stretch of time every year to kind of recharge. And we need those rhythmic rechargings in our life. I mean, we have a cell phone, but this thing is useless to me if the battery's drained. You have to consistently. Now mine has a battery that's the size of a Buick, but it'll last me a couple of 2 days probably. Yeah. If I want it to, but ultimately it'll die if I don't recharge it. No matter how big the battery is, no matter what your capacity is, if you don't recharge on a consistent basis, you quit working.
Yeah, and I think giving yourself that freedom to be human and understand that at a certain point you've got to take a break. Right?
Have to. It's essential. It's not even optional.
Yeah, it's
self-care. And I know you talk about self-care, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's kind of woo-woo." But look, I chase a lot of that woo-woo stuff. If we don't do it, we end up paying a price for it. And they recognize it in the airlines. So in the airlines, if you're in massive turbulence and a possible crash, an oxygen mask will drop out, and they tell you secure your mask first so that you can then help other people. And that truism is true across the board.
Yeah.
If you don't take proper care of yourself, you can't stay ministering to other people or helping other people long term. You'll burn out. And one of the groups that I worry about, because I work at the school with you, is I see the teachers, and they give and they give and they give, and I worry that maybe they don't spend enough time recharging.
Yeah, I think it's. I know that early in my career, I probably did the classic problem where you go home and you spend 12 hours doing your lesson plans, and then the next day. But you can only sustain that so long, and I know that there's lots of hard jobs out there, not that teachers. But I know that I think the average teacher sticks around 3 or 4 years now. But when you talk, or they go for a lifetime. And when you talk to the ones that are there 2 or 3 years, they describe that 12-hour week. And when you talk to the ones that have been there 25 years, they say 1 day a week is mine.
Right.
And they don't violate that. Right?
So that's brilliant, and that's a principle of Sabbath. That goes back to creation. I mean, God created the heaven and earth in 6 days. That's my view of it. And on the 7th day, He rested. And He didn't do that because He was tired. He did it so that you and I would have a pattern to follow.
Yep.
And there's an entrepreneur that has written a book about the Sabbath, and he actually had made it to the top and was very wealthy, but he found out that it was killing him. And so he realized he needed to build a rhythm of rest into his life. And so he started studying his religious roots were Jewish. And so in his family, there were those that actually observed the Sabbath day. And there was this unplugging from everything else for a period of time, in 24 hours, to unplug from the normal rat race and to get recharged. And we're missing that. That's one thing that I worry about. I think our American work ethic is a good thing. I think that it's created a prosperity in our nation that other nations don't have.
Sure.
I've been to Greece, and they had some unions that were striking at the time, and the government was bankrupt, and it was a system that wasn't built right. But in America, we're hard workers, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But we have to be careful that now we've turned it into a 24/7 workforce, 365. Right. So now we're doing it open all day, access all day, and I don't know that that's good.
I don't know that it's healthy for us, and I would agree with you on that. I have found So I've been teaching now a little over a decade, and I do hold to that. One day is fine. I have to. So if I can get two, I will. So that's not always possible, sure. But if I can get two, I will. I find that I'm more productive on Monday, and I'm a better teacher for my students.
Efficiency experts say that's absolutely the case, that we are more efficient if we take some downtime. It's true of studying. If you study for too long a stretch of time, you lose the efficiency of that study time. You're actually better off taking small breaks in the study time. So you study for an hour, take a break for 15 minutes, study for 45 minutes, take a break for 15 minutes, something along that line, and then you're more effective at studying. And with work, in the early 1900s, they had these efficiency experts in the Industrial Revolution who were trying to sort of make these factories, which were kind of a new concept, how to make them work better. And one of the things that the efficiency experts were the ones that injected the brake into there. It wasn't the employees that were doing it, but the efficiency experts found that if you rested periodically through the day, you then were actually producing more because you had that time to rest, to clear your head, and then you could hit it again almost like it was fresh again.
I think that's one thing that's really important, especially in the type of room that I work in, because it's not like those kids could be alone, right? That's fine. That's part of that. But what we have found is that between the staff in that room, we have to help each other, right? And I always know when it's my time to take a break, because I will be sitting at the keyboard and not actually doing anything.
in a zoned out zombie-like state. You're like,
yeah. And that's what happened. And then you walk, even if it's just walking down to the end of the hall and coming back, you come in, okay, I'm ready to do this again. So,
and maybe that's breaking the pattern is a good way to deal with stress. If you can break because a lot of times we're habitual thinkers. Our brain tends to flow along narrow superhighways, and so we habitually think certain ways. And anxiety and depression are wrong thoughts that we thought habitually.
We're telling ourselves the wrong thing over and over.
Right. And so we have to break the pattern. We have to create a new pattern there instead of the old pattern. And so there's an idea of a pattern interrupt that you do on yourself. And if you can interrupt that depressive pattern or the anxious pattern, one of the ways when I was having panic attacks that I was doing that is taking in a nice deep breath, and actually feeling the breath going in as it warmed up my nose, kind of the warm air that comes in, or cool air that comes in, and then the warm air that comes out. So cool air coming in, you feel the coolness of it, and then the warm air that goes out. And being focused on that interrupted the pattern of the negative thinking long enough for me to get a new thought in there. And that new thought was a faith thought. Like I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. I'm with you always, even to the end of the age, or the nearness of God.
Isn't there something about like our thoughts become our actions, and our actions, our words, and our words become our actions, right? So if we're feeding ourselves the wrong things, obviously, then that's what we become.
Sure. It's thought, attitude, action, habit, stronghold.
Yeah.
There's a series that goes, and you can see it in Lot's life as he heads towards Sodom and Gomorrah. There's a flow towards destruction.
He's headed the wrong way.
He's headed the wrong way, and we have to break ourselves out of that flow, that destructive flow. Now that same pattern though can work towards good if you aim it towards good. If we can consistently discipline our mind, and it does take discipline of our mind, because our feelings typically flow out of what we're predominantly thinking about. And so if I've got to win the battle for my mind.
And science, actually, interestingly enough, is supporting, I think, what Scripture has been saying all along. But this whole idea that, with string theory, and I don't profess to be a guru scientist, but essentially that our thoughts can create reality.
Right? Our thoughts have a powerful effect on what's going on around us, and our attitudes are so vital. I can go through almost identical events in one day and another day, and one day is terrible and another day is great. And honestly, the only different thing about it was what my mindset, my reactions to things. And so one preacher, he said, your attitude determines your altitude. And he said on an airplane, there's an attitude indicator that is either below, it's a little picture of a plane, it's either below the horizon or above the horizon. And he said it's I don't know, I've never seen the data, but that's what he said.
Yeah, no, that's true.
An attitude indicator. And he said if your attitude's up, you're going up. If your attitude's down, you're going down. And he said your attitude determines your altitude.
Yeah, that's a great way.
I like it, man. That's good. And so then nose up. So I need to have a nose up attitude, and where I'm up and
well, and so much of it is out of our control. I can't control a lot of those things, but I can control what I think about those things.
Yes, I have 100% control of what I think. Yeah. I was telling you today about a podcast that I was listening to. It was a Harvard, I think, psychiatrist, and she gave an analogy that I loved. I just loved it. It was about colonial India when the British had colonized India. And one of the things that was sort of the new rage was golf. Golf had fairly recently been invented. It was kind of taking off, much as tennis was in the early 1900s. And so it was kind of becoming the thing to do. And they wanted to play golf in India, but there's not these golf courses. So they build these golf courses. Right. And the issue that they have is there's these aggressive monkeys in India that come in and are messing up their games. So these guys are hitting the balls, and the monkeys are swarming the field, grabbing the balls, carrying it, throwing the ball, biting the ball to see if it's food, and just messing up the game. Yeah. And so we got to do something about the monkeys. So she had those rotten monkeys. Yeah. So they get together, they decide to build a wall. Well, monkeys are good at climbing walls, right. So the monkeys climb the walls and get in and mess up the game yet again.
Yeah.
And so everybody votes to get rid of the monkeys. So they go out and catch the monkeys and take the monkeys to another forest, release them, and within a matter of weeks they got either a new group of monkeys or these monkeys have made their way back to this place. They don't know which. Sure. It doesn't matter because they still got a monkey problem.
The monkeys are still there.
The monkeys are still a problem. Yeah. And so the solution comes from a guy who's sitting there and he says, what if we play the ball where the monkey drops the ball? And that's what they end up doing is they end up playing the ball where the monkey drops the ball. And the metaphor for me was there are things that are in my life that I have zero control over. Yeah. I think there are those that are kind of almost defeatist about where they go, well, I can't do anything about anything. And no, that's not, but once you come up against a problem and you've done everything you can to make it better, everything you can to change it in a positive way, but maybe you can't change it.
Maybe,
so you come to the place where I'm going to play the ball where the monkey dropped it. Mm-hmm. This is my new normal. It's not what I would have chosen for my life or myself. But this is the situation that I'm in, and I think that works if your marriage is bad. I think it works if your kids are in rebellion. I think it works if you got a jerk boss. I think it works if whatever situation your health is not good. And it's a theological principle that I learned from Hannah Hurnard in two fiction books. One is called Hind's Feet to High Places, and the other one is Mountains of Spices. And it's about a little girl named Much Afraid who's trying to make her way really to heaven. It's kind of a Pilgrim's Progress allegory. And along the way, she has to learn this concept of acceptance with joy because she's got a bad family situation. There's some abusive people that are there, and she's changed what she can change, but there's an element of acceptance with joy. Yeah. And so there's these mean people that are there, and she's like, I've got to find joy in the midst of this. And one of the traps I think we fall into is we wait for these ideal circumstances to have joy. Yeah. Well, when's that going to happen?
We're waiting for an ideal situation in a world that's not ideal.
It's not ideal.
Right. Yeah. And so I can either choose to be miserable or I can choose to be happy.
I'm thinking about writing a book called The Inconvenient Truth of Audacious Hope. And that's nothing to do with politics or climate change. Right. It has to do with the concept. The inconvenient truth about the audacity of hope is that if I get my heart set on something that is not going to happen, and I hinge all my joy and happiness on this event in this broken, sinful world that is not going to change. It's not going to get any different. And so, how can I find a way to have joy in my circumstances, even though that thing that I would most like to happen is not going to happen?
Yeah, I think that's powerful, and I think that that's a conclusion that I came to in that 2007, 2009 time frame where we fell on hard times. And what I found was, I'm still alive, even if materialistically I'm struggling, right? And so the sun is still up, the birds are still singing, so I can either choose to be sad because this thing happened to me, or my retirement's dwindled, or whatever, or I can just say, you know what, I'm here now and I'm breathing, so I'm going to play where the monkey dropped the ball.
Play where the monkey dropped the ball.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I think that's the only realistic way to do it. I think that in saying that, I'm not saying don't try to make your situation better. I'm not even saying
here's where
don't
I'm
have
starting
hope.
from.
And you head towards these SMART goals that are achievable goals, that are goals that you can make, and so you make your life a little bit better every day. And I think sometimes when we kind of develop almost a pie in the sky thinking about this problem that we want to go in one giant leap from where there's this mess of the situation to this place where everything is all solved. And most big problems are not solved that way. You got into the problem, it took you years to get into it, and it may take you years to get out of it. And so you get a little bit better each day. So if you're just doing 10% better tomorrow, and then 15% better the next week, and 25% better the next week, it doesn't take long before you've actually solved the problem, or got at least to some resolution that's acceptable to you. But you didn't
at
have
least
to
have the right.
Yeah. And that's there's a teacher that wrote a book. I think his name was Dodd. It was called Joy in the Journey, and the concept is that instead of having joy in the destination, a lot of times we have destination disease.
Yeah.
So it's like if I move to a new place, I'll have joy. If I have another job, I'll have joy. If I get another wife, I'll have joy. If I get new kids, like one. One mom, she had a frustrating day with the 3 kids, and they were little kids, and they said, "Would you have 3 kids again?" And she goes, "Yeah, but not these 3 kids.
Yeah, as if the other kids are going to be that much different.
And this idea that if I just had this different set of circumstances, I could have joy. But his contention was, rather than finding joy in destination, have joy in the journey.
I think that's true, because I also, and that kind of relates to the concept of challenge. But I find achievement is good.
Sure.
I'm not saying that achievement isn't. But I find that actually I learn the most in the struggle.
Yeah.
So when I achieve something, there's almost a letdown. When I went for this degree and then I got it, I'm like, well, okay, well now what? Well, I'll go for another one, right? And at a certain point, that becomes like a hole, right? Like I can't do this forever.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, like you gotta find another way. Not that you can't find another challenge or another thing to work towards, but I guess that's why they say it's lonely at the top, right? Because
you've achieved everything.
You've achieved everything. So what's next, right? Like there has to be something to work toward.
Well, like the astronauts, some of the astronauts that after they did a moon landing and walked on the moon, or after they've been to space, when they came back, they struggle a little bit with, well, what now?
Yeah.
Because their whole life had been built on. I mean, the very phrase that was used to describe them was about getting out into the atmosphere, getting out into space, and going to the moon or whatever. And now that you've walked on the moon, how do you walk in your backyard and get the same joy out of it? And so you've got to find a way to have joy in the journeys of life.
Yeah, I would say that I've experienced that, maybe not on the scale of an astronaut, but just as you achieve different things or have done different things in life, you start to go, okay, well, what can I do now?
What now? What next?
What do I do next, right? So I think
there's a story in the Bible about Elijah, who is called fire down from heaven, has had a prayer for rain answered for him. A drought was broken because of the prayer. And then a politically powerful woman sends him a threatening letter, and he goes from the highest of highs to where he's called fire down from heaven to consume a sacrifice offered to God. He's brought rain in by prayer. He's fought a battle and won. And now this letter, just after the mountaintop experience, it whammies him out, and he goes into a deep depression. He finds himself sitting under a juniper tree, and he says, I'm not better than my fathers. Take me now, kind of the concept. I'm ready to go. He's not suicidal, but he's just one step away from it. He's done.
Yeah.
Sick of working me, I'm done. And so then God has him fed, provides food for him, provides water for him, has rest for him. And then he goes to a mountain that God calls him to, and he runs in the strength of the meat that God gave him. And he gets to this mountain, and there's an earthquake, and God's not in the earthquake. There's a fire, and God's not in the fire. There's a great wind, and God's not in the great wind. But then God speaks to him in a still small voice. And he says, hey, Elijah, there's 7,000 people that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. You're not the only one left. And he goes, I'm gonna raise up Jehu, who's going to be a political ally. I'm going to raise up this, I can't remember the other kings. I'm going to raise up somebody else who's going to be a political ally. I'm going to give you Elisha that's going to help you. And so these 4 individuals are handpicked by God to help this prophet that's really struggling with almost a life-ending depression. And the fact that now you're not alone. There's 7,000 people that are still following me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
And so I think we have to come to those times when we can get quiet and listen to God and then get back into it, you know,
Right.
Get back into the journey, doing what God's
Once more
called
into
to
the
do.
breach, dear friend.
Yeah, once more to the breach.
That's right.
Is that the charge of the Light Brigade?
I can't
Yeah,
remember.
it seems like it's Tennyson, maybe Tennyson.
It might
Charge of the
be.
Light
It might
Brigade.
be. I always connect it, which I know this is pop culture, but I always connect it back to Star Trek, right?
Okay.
When Kirk is fighting, yeah.
Sure.
But I know that's not where it comes from.
Yeah.
But,
I love that quote.
Yeah.
That's a powerful one.
but I like that contrast.
Are there quotes like that help you?
I
if
do.
you're
I
in
put
an
them on my
anxiety?
door too at school, and I have them. Well, right on the back of my. I have the Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in Him, and I am helped. And then basically it's the Sermon on the Mount below that.
Powerful.
Yeah, and the one that I probably read the most is basically I'm probably going to say it wrong, but something to the effect that they will speak all manner of evil against you and they'll rise against you. So if you're doing the right thing, just be
You will have
prepared.
opposition.
You will have opposition. and be
We're known
prepared.
not only by our friends, but even by our enemies.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
There's the one that helps me a lot that I use all the time. I probably say it to myself once a week. It's when you can't trace God's hand, you can trust God's heart. And Spurgeon said it, a preacher in the mid-1800s. And it's always meant a lot to me because sometimes I can't see what God is doing, but I trust my Father to do the right thing. You ever watched a kid throw themselves at their dad to catch him because they know Dad's going to do everything in the world to catch them.
Yeah.
You know, and you become this instant juggler of humanity. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
to catch the child that you're like, wow, I wish you'd give me a little warning before you fling yourself at me. You
But
know,
I'll still catch you.
but they trust your heart,
Yeah,
you know, and I
absolutely.
can trust the Father heart of God to know what's in my best interest and my family's and the nations and the kingdoms, so that when I can't trace God's hand, I can trust God's heart. Another one that I'm going to be talking about tonight with my Bible study group is treat your care with prayer. Take it to God in prayer. Sometimes we go to the phone when we should go to the throne, you know, and it's not that it's wrong to talk to other people. In fact, the Bible says wisdom in a multitude of counselors, but there's some people we probably shouldn't talk about.
We don't
problems.
necessarily need that counsel.
Yeah,
Right,
because their counsel's bad.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's some people
yeah.
that are so negative and so they're so bitter themselves that their root of bitterness. When you start talking to them about a problem, their bitterness spills over into you rather than strengthening and innovating you and bucking you up to charge once more into the breach. They drain you.
Yeah, they do.
One pastor calls them joy suckers. You know, there's people that come along and it's almost like they got one of those backpack vacuums on and they come along and
just
suck
gonna
the
take
joy
it
out
all
of
away.
everybody. You know, and you know how you can tell that you're coming close to a joy sucker is you've got the burning desire to run when you see them. You know, so that you're going down the aisle at Walmart and you see them, but they don't see you, and you instantly whip around and you go 3 aisles over where you're pretty sure they've already been, and you do your shopping over there because the joy sucker is
I
there.
just don't need that negativity.
I don't need it, you know. And there's some people. Charlie Tremendous Jones used to say that who you are 5 years from now will be determined by the books you read and the friends you have. And we got to be careful that we choose some positive friends. But beyond even our friends that are good for us, I need to go to God. Because my friends can provide a good sounding board, which is a good thing. We talk about that. That's powerful. But what God can do is He can supernaturally move in the situation. So it's not just that He provides a listening, non-critical ear, which He does, but He can actually do something about it. So I think treat your care with prayer.
That's a good thing to think about. I also, on my door, I have, quotes from Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln and those, because there was that resiliency, toughness of mind is how I might explain it. So one of my favorite is when he talks about the critic. It's not the critic who counts; it's the man in the arena, right, or woman.
The sweat and the blood, and they're the ones that are fighting it out.
Yes, and I pity those that know neither victory nor defeat. In other words, if you're not losing or winning, you're probably not living.
You're just this pitiful
because
observer.
You're just there.
And that's the tragedy of modern American life is we are only observers. We got to get into life. We got to get into where we're contacting people and doing things and having conversations like we're having instead of just existing and just mindlessly reading a stream of other people. That is only useful to inspire us to action.
Yeah.
One of the things I liked when you're talking about your vision for your channel is that you want people to get out there. Your adventure videos are not just to be a replacement for being out in the wild. It's to create a thirst, like one potato chip. I can't eat one Pringle without eating the whole can.
Yeah,
exactly. So your videos are meant to be. I take a bite of it and then I go out too.
Yeah, I want them to have that adventure too, to live and and feel that. So I think that's super important because you can only be the observer so long, before I think it's incomplete, right?
Sure.
So
then you become that critic. If you're an observer, you sit back and you're looking at the thing happening and going, well, I wouldn't have done that, or I would do this. Well, do that.
Do that. What does that feel like?
Yeah, do that and see how it works. I mean, it may not work the way you think. Americans are famous to be an armchair quarterback.
Yeah.
Probably every Sunday you can hear a roar coming from various houses of people yelling at quarterbacks and yelling at defensive lines because they didn't do their job. And most of the time when I'm looking at my football friends, I'm like, you think you could do better? I'm like, you really?
I'm sure I wouldn't have got 5 yards.
Pretty sure if the guy hiked me the ball, I'd be running the other way.
Yeah,
I'm heading towards my own goal line. You got these 400-pound guys that can run the 75-yard dash in 3.2 seconds or something.
Yeah.
They're going to hit you like a freight train. But we're yelling out like somehow we could do better.
Yeah. And I think too, there's enough challenge. I think if you look for it in your own life, whatever your position or status, or I think you can find ways to challenge yourself or change things for the better, and you'll find that maybe it's harder than it looks.
Yeah. We're really critical of other people, and really we tend to go soft on ourselves and hard on others. Really, we should be hard on ourselves, and maybe not totally hard on ourselves, but have an appropriate level that we should live to.
Yeah,
what I mean? Yeah. Have a good standard for ourselves, but cut other people slack.
Well, and just maybe understand why they're reacting the way that they're reacting, and there's all sorts of pressures on people at all different levels, right? And so, but I know you've got to get over the Twin Falls.
Yeah, I gotta collect some kids, and I've got to go over there and do the Bible study. And we're excited about it.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me.
We'll do it again, I hope.
I would love to.
So, thanks.
Love to.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.